My name's Jillian Hartley. I'm 34, divorced, broke, and living in my parents' guest room. So yeah, you could say I'm the walking definition of a family disappointment. A few years ago, I owned a design studio in Austin. I had a team of 5, decent clients, even made it into a local magazine once. Then came the perfect storm. My biggest client went under and defaulted on their payments. My marriage collapsed like a wet cardboard box, and I burned through my savings trying to stay afloat. I shut down the studio 6 months later. No backup plan. No parachute. Just me and a U-Haul full of unpaid invoices and furniture I didn't have space for. I moved back home thinking it would be temporary. It's been almost a year. My sister Samantha, 5 years older, never fails to remind me how long it's been. She works in commercial real estate, drives a black Mercedes, wears heels that cost more than my entire wardrobe, and still somehow manages to look like she just stepped out of a Forbes profile. My parents adore her. Always have. She's the safe bet. The one who did everything right. I'm the one they don't really know what to do with. Last weekend, during Sunday dinner, Samantha leaned across the table with that passive-aggressive sparkle in her eye and asked, "So, Jill, still freeloading? Or are we calling it sabbatical now?" The room froze for half a second. Then my dad gave one of his awkward chuckles. My mom stared down into her casserole like it might save her, and I smiled. I said nothing. Just smiled. Because I knew if I opened my mouth, something ugly would come out. What I wanted to say was, I didn't ask to come crawling back. I didn't plan to spend my 30s sleeping in the same bed I had in middle school. I'm not proud of where I am, but I also know I'm not staying here forever. I've been working quietly, behind the scenes, trying to rebuild something for myself. But you say one word about that at the dinner table, and suddenly it's, "Oh, Jill, don't you think it's time to be realistic?" They've all decided who I am. The one who gave up, the one who failed. The truth is, I've changed. The person they think I am. That woman is gone. She died somewhere between closing her business account and trying to breathe through a panic attack in the courthouse elevator during the divorce hearing. But no one in my family has bothered to get to know who took her place. After dinner, I sat on the back porch alone, watching Samantha's car pull out of the driveway, her taillights disappearing into the dark. I was still holding my paper plate like a damn souvenir from humiliation. And then my phone buzzed. It was a name I hadn't seen in nearly a decade. Thomas Brewer. Back when I was just starting out as a design intern, Thomas ran one of the most respected architecture firms in Dallas. He used to come speak at my university, and one year I got assigned to shadow him for a week. He barely spoke to me back then, but I remembered him clearly. Sharp mind. No tolerance for BS. Ran his meetings like a battlefield general. His message was short. "Jillian, I'm working on a new project outside Dallas. Sustainable mixed use. Heavy on community integration. I need a different kind of thinker. Someone who doesn't just see square footage, but how people live. I remember you had that eye. Are you available?" I read the message 3 times, then again. I thought it might be a mistake. But he followed up 10 minutes later. "Let me know by Monday. We'll fly you out. I'll explain more in person, but I think this could be your reset." Reset. He had no idea just how much I needed that word. So I said yes, not knowing where it would lead. Not knowing that this one message was going to put me face to face with Samantha again. But this time, on my turf. And not knowing that the next time she tried to belittle me in public, it would backfire in a way she never saw coming. I barely slept that night. Thomas Brewer, the same man I thought barely remembered my name, was flying me out to consult on a real estate project that sounded bigger than anything I'd ever touched. I packed like a lunatic. Not because I didn't know what to bring, but because I kept second-guessing whether I even deserved to go. What if I said something stupid? What if he realized he made a mistake and meant to text someone else? But by Monday morning, I was boarding a plane to Dallas, feeling equal parts nauseous and electric. Thomas met me at the site, an empty 40-acre lot about 15 minutes outside the city. Nothing but wind, overgrown grass, and a few fading survey flags flapping in the dirt. But the way he talked about it, I could see the bones of something different. We've got backers, permits, the works, he told me, gesturing across the space. What we don't have is a soul. I don't want another glass fortress. I want a place people feel like they belong in. And you, when you were a student, you sketched buildings that breathed. I almost choked. No one in my life had ever referred to my work like that. Not my professors, not my ex-husband, definitely not my family. I didn't know how to respond, so I asked for coffee and time to think. We sat in a small cafe near the lot and I listened to him outline the plan. A multi-use development, retail on bottom, affordable apartments on top, green rooftops, shaded courtyards. It was ambitious and risky. I need someone who can cut through the nonsense, he said, stirring sugar into his espresso. You've seen both sides, vision and failure. That's rare. That's real. That's when it hit me. This wasn't a job interview. He wasn't testing me. He had already chosen me. By the end of the week, I'd signed on as a lead design consultant. He gave me full reign over the livability strategy, layouts, flow, material use, natural light, accessibility. He trusted me. No one micromanaged, no endless meetings, just me, a giant blank canvas and the chance to build something that actually mattered. I dove into the work, sketched until my wrist cramped, binge-read sustainability journals, interviewed community leaders about what they needed most. And for the first time in years, I started to feel like myself again. But life, of course, doesn't hand you momentum without friction. 3 months in, I was back in Austin, working from my laptop in my parents' kitchen, again, when Samantha burst through the door unannounced, on speakerphone with someone from her company. Yeah, we're finalizing a partnership with a new project outside Dallas, some greenwash thing. Marketing's going nuts about it, she said, grabbing a sparkling water like she owned the place. Big vision, no strategy. We'll probably take over in 6 months. I froze. She didn't notice me at first. When she did, she gave me her signature once over. That smirk. The same one she used at every family event to remind me exactly where I stood. I guess even you have heard about it by now, she said. Maybe you can get a job planting trees. I didn't respond, because in that moment my heart had dropped to the floor. Her company, Summit Terra, was the one Thomas had just mentioned in an internal memo. A potential development partner. One of 3 finalists. I was going to have to work with my sister. No, she was going to have to work with me. At that point, she still thought I was unemployed. Still thought I was a cautionary tale in a guest bedroom. But the next time we stood in the same room, I would be standing between her and a $100 million contract. And she didn't even know it yet. I'd love to say I was calm and collected when I found out Samantha's firm was in the running to partner with Thomas. I wasn't. I went straight to the bathroom, locked the door, and stood over the sink, gripping the porcelain like it might crack. I stared at my own face and thought, nope, not yet. She's not going to know. Not until she has to look up to see me. I kept working. Kept quiet. While Samantha kept dropping snide comments at family dinners. Real work's hard to come by, huh? Or, some of us don't have the luxury of starting over every 6 months. Every time she opened her mouth, she had no idea she was getting closer to being outplayed on a stage way bigger than our parents' kitchen. 3 weeks later, Thomas invited me to an industry networking event in Dallas. Casual, invite-only, drinks and handshakes. The usual backroom mixer where half the future gets decided in whispers over bourbon. I didn't know Summit Terra would be there. I found out the moment I stepped into the event hall and saw the massive logo on one of the displays. Summit Terra, building tomorrow. And standing right in front of it, in a crimson dress that probably cost more than my car, was Samantha. I almost turned around. But then Thomas walked up behind me, smiling like a proud dad, and said, "Glad you made it. Half the room's buzzing about your courtyard layout. You're onto something." I nodded. heartbeat in my throat, and followed him toward the main circle of executives. Halfway through our walk, Samantha saw me. She blinked once. Then again. I could see the confusion flicker across her face, like her brain was trying to connect the dots and the math wasn't mathing. "Jill?" she called out, her voice sweet but tight. "What are you doing here?" Before I could answer, Thomas turned and said, "You two know each other?" "She's my sister," Samantha said quickly. Didn't realize she was in this space. "She's the reason we're even considering this partnership," Thomas said without missing a beat. "Lead design consultant on the entire livability model. Her courtyard plan is going to anchor phase 1. Silence. I swear the air changed. Samantha's face didn't fall. It locked. Like every gear behind her eyes just seized up. "You're working on this?" she asked, eyes narrowing. I smiled, just enough to be polite. "I am." She looked at Thomas, then back at me. "Since when?" "Since before your firm even made the finalist list," I said. She laughed, a tight, brittle sound. "Well, this should be interesting." And just like that, I was back in her line of fire. Except this time, we weren't in a dining room. We were in a boardroom dressed in cocktail attire. Later that evening, I overheard her talking to her VP near the bar. "She's not equipped for this level of coordination," she whispered. "She flamed out once already. There's no guarantee she doesn't do it again on our project." I bit my tongue so hard I tasted blood. But I said nothing. Not yet. The twist didn't come until the next afternoon. I was in a debrief meeting with Thomas and the internal development team, reviewing the revised proposals from the 3 bidding firms. When we got to Summit Terra's submission, Thomas flipped through it once, twice, then set it down. "This isn't going to work," he said, frowning. "Their proposal lifts our exact design language, but guts the sustainability model. They're trying to cut costs by stripping out key components Jillian built into the framework someone asked if he wanted to give them a chance to revise." "No," he said flatly. "If they don't respect our values now, they won't later." Then he turned to me. "Jillian, can you walk us through which parts were changed?" I opened the packet and started reading. My hand stopped halfway through the second page. There, in the design notes section, was a paragraph I knew I had written. Word for word. A concept I'd drafted 3 weeks earlier in a private doc I hadn't shared with anyone except Thomas. It was copied and pasted, without credit, and signed Lead Design Insight, Samantha Hartley, Vice President Strategy, Summit Terra. The room went dead quiet. That was the moment I realized my sister didn't just think I was irrelevant. She was stealing from me. I stared at that packet like it had slapped me across the face. There it was, my own phrasing, lifted straight from my planning doc. My theory about neighborhood breathing spaces and modular shade systems, copied word for word and signed under Samantha's name. She hadn't even bothered to rephrase it, just dragged and dropped like my work was some Pinterest quote. I didn't say anything in that room. I just closed the packet, looked up, and said, "I need to step out for a second." I walked straight into the hallway, heart hammering in my chest, and texted Thomas. That design language was stolen. I can prove it. He replied 2 minutes later, "My office." Now. The next hour was a blur. I pulled up timestamped drafts, internal emails, and screen recordings. Thomas didn't ask many questions. He just watched. Quiet. Focused. The longer he looked, the tighter his jaw got. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and let out a slow breath. "This wasn't a mistake," he said. "She knew exactly what she was doing." He didn't get angry. He got surgical. "I'll take care of it," he added. "But I want to offer you a choice. If I pull them now, you'll never get to confront her. This'll end quietly, professionally." I paused. God, I wanted to just end it right there. Take the high road. But something in me, it wasn't revenge exactly. It was older than that. Something that had been festering since we were kids. Since she first rolled her eyes at my science fair projects, or scoffed at my design work as just artsy stuff. I needed her to know she'd picked the wrong person to underestimate. So I told Thomas the truth. I want her in the room when she realizes I'm not the one who should have been worried. He nodded once. Then come to the final pitch presentation. The next week crawled by. Samantha had no clue. She was still acting like I was some background extra in her power fantasy. Even showed up to my parents' house one night with a bottle of wine, talking about how exciting it was that we were working on the same project. I mean, we've come such a long way, she said sweetly. And hey, if you ever need help structuring your proposal language, let me know. That's kind of my strong suit. I wanted to laugh, or scream, or both, but I just smiled and said, I'll keep that in mind. The day of the final presentations, I wore black slacks and a navy blouse. Nothing flashy, just solid, sharp, unassuming. Samantha came in swinging, heels clicking, blazer cinched like a battle flag. Her team set up a glossy slide deck. She gave a confident opening. And then she clicked to slide number 5. There it was, my courtyard diagram. The same color palette, the same measurements, even the note in the corner that read, Preliminary Flow Concept, SH. Thomas turned to me. I stood. I'm sorry to interrupt, I said calmly, stepping toward the projector. But that concept wasn't created by Summit Terra. It was created by me, 3 weeks prior to this submission. There was a ripple across the room. Samantha blinked. What are you talking about? Thomas spoke next. We've reviewed the documentation. Ms. Hartley's version is time-stamped, watermarked, and filed through our internal server. What you've submitted constitutes an intellectual property violation. Someone from her team turned pale. Samantha opened her mouth, but Thomas cut her off. As a result, Summit Terra's proposal has been disqualified from this project, effective immediately. The silence in that room could have shattered glass. I should have felt triumphant, victorious, but all I felt was free. Free from the weight of always explaining myself. Free from needing her approval. And maybe most shocking of all, free to decide what came next, not out of spite, but out of strength. Then came the twist. As everyone began packing up, Thomas pulled me aside. I've spoken with the board, he said. We're restructuring the project team moving forward, and we'd like you to step into the leadership role, project director. I blinked. You want me to run the entire development? He smiled. We don't want you to. We need you to. And that's when I realized this wasn't about beating my sister. This was about finally stepping into something I built myself. No one could take that from me, especially not her. The Monday after the disqualification, my inbox exploded. Journalists, contractors, 2 legal teams, and, unsurprisingly, Summit Terra's HR department all wanted to connect. I ignored most of it. My focus was on one thing, the project. Thomas kept his word. Within days, I was introduced to the board as the new project director. There was no ceremony, no press release. Just a quiet handoff of real power. Budgets, timelines, and final say on every major build decision. It felt surreal. A year ago, I was sleeping in a twin bed under a ceiling fan that rattled every time I turned over. Now I was leading a multi-phase development that could change the way the city thought about shared spaces. But there was one loose thread. One I couldn't ignore. Samantha. She'd gone silent. No texts, no calls. Just vanished. I didn't hear from her until 2 weeks later when I stopped by our parents' house to drop off some papers. Mom was in the kitchen, folding dish towels like her life depended on it. She came by, she said softly, not looking at me. Said she's thinking of leaving the company. I didn't respond right away. I poured myself some water, waited. She said people at work stopped looking her in the eye. Mom added, she's not handling it well. For a long moment, I didn't know what I felt. Not pity, not satisfaction, just tired. She did that to herself, I said quietly. And not just to me, to people who trusted her name on that proposal. That night, I got an email. No subject line, no salutation. I shouldn't have done what I did. Not just the stealing, everything. You earned this. I didn't know who you'd become. I still don't really. I hope someday I do. It wasn't an apology, but it was an admission. And honestly, that was more shocking than any public fallout. I didn't reply. She wasn't my responsibility anymore. Over the next 6 months, the project came alive. One poured foundation, one sunshaded terrace, one community garden at a time. I hired new talent, many from non-traditional backgrounds who brought fresh eyes and no ego. We built something human, something that worked. As for Samantha, I heard through the grapevine that she'd been quietly moved to an internal position at Summit Terra. No press, no clients, no access to outside proposals. In other words, she was done. And not because I ruined her, because she did. All I did was show up, not as a victim, not as someone trying to prove herself, but as the person I'd always quietly been, even when no one believed me. People think revenge is about public takedowns, headlines, mic drops. But for me, it was standing on that project site one evening, watching the light hit the red brick just right, and realizing, she can't take this. She never could. When people underestimate you long enough, you start doing it to yourself. The hardest part isn't proving them wrong. It's remembering you were never broken in the first place. If you've ever been talked down to, erased, or treated like your voice didn't matter, I hope you'll share your story in the comments. I'm still learning from mine. And if you've made it this far, thank you for listening. Feel free to hit subscribe if you want to hear more stories like this. Sometimes just knowing someone else has been through it makes all the difference.